To those who have accidentally ended someone's life, what went wrong?
Experience 1. My dad is a garbage truck driver in a major city. A few years ago, there was a dead and crushed homeless man found at the dump. They went through the camera footage and the tickets for the trucks coming and going and narrowed it down to my dad's truck who dumped the man. The guy was sleeping in a dumpster. For those of you who don't know, there's a packer blade in the back of those trucks to squish the garbage to make more room. He didn't stand a chance. Experience 2. No, but I thought I did for almost 2 years. Very close friend of mine, the kind of guy that always seemed to be happy and everybody just loved him, was hanging out at his place. We were 16 back then, and for whatever reason Don T remembers, I showed him how to tie the hangman's knot. 3 days later he was dead. His mom called, claiming he hung himself and it was all my fault. Screwed me up badly. My friend was dead, I never saw anything coming, and apparently, it was even my fault. Almost 2 years later we found out by coincidence that he killed himself with exhaust fumes in his mom's car. I'll never know why he did it, which still haunts me sometimes, or why his mom blamed me with wrong accusations. Never could be angry about that though, given how painful that must have been for her, or how she knew about that stupid knot. Experience 3. I asked my college roommate to drive my car since I was tired. Not sure what happened as I was asleep, but he ended up hitting an oncoming vehicle head-on at around 60 to 70 miles per hour. I was the only survivor. His parents were extremely helpful in forcing me to accept that it wasn't my fault. But my heart breaks regularly for his lost potential. He was an incredible guy and would have done great things, I'm sure of it. Experience 4. This never happened to me personally, but my dad drove for Toronto's subways and streetcars for 30 years. The number of self-deletions he's seen is astonishing. Just last month a mother and her newborn jumped. Both passed away. My dad has always had therapy once a week my entire life. I understand why. Experience 5. It turned out that a new coworker lived in the same apartment complex as me across town. She had just moved to the area a few weeks back. We actually ended up going to Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows .1 midnight screening together. She was a really passionate fan of Potter. It was great. Her car was in the shop suddenly one day, so I told her at work about a shortcut she could take home on her bike. She went that way and was killed by a drunk driver crossing that other road. She was 26, the guy was going 75 in a 35 zone trying to show off his souped-up sports car. Sorry for the shortcut, Angie. Experience 6. A crazy wasted guy broke into my house several years ago. He had a knife and was threatening me. My young son and I were the only ones home. I heard a noise in my house and grabbed a baseball bat I kept under my bed and went to investigate thinking it was probably nothing. The guy came at me yelling incoherently, and almost as a reflex I cracked on top of his head with the bat. I think my adrenaline must have put more into the strike than I thought I was doing, and the guy dropped immediately. I called 911 and the police arrived quickly, but he was already gone. Crushed skull. I still have nightmares fairly often, but can't picture how else it would have ended without me and possibly my son being attacked. Survival instincts are strong. Experience 7. I didn't accidentally kill them, but I was riding home with a friend of mine on our bikes down the turnpike when a senior citizen who didn't check their blind spot changed lanes and sent my friend into and over the guardrail into a tree, severing his spine on impact, paralyzing him from the shoulders down, ribs puncturing his lungs as well. I just had to sit there and listen to him gasp and struggle to take his last few breaths on our linked intercom headsets. Experience 8. This happened to my uncle back in the 1970s. He was coming home from work one night in a snowstorm and turned onto his road. His house was on the other side of a hill. He climbed the hill, and as he started descending the other side, he heard kids screaming and yelling. The brakes were useless. He ran over a 10-year-old kid who was sledging down the hill in the middle of the road and killed him. It was his next-door neighbor. There was no charge against him, nobody sued him, because it was clear that it was a freak accident. Even the kid's parents told him it was not his fault. However, my uncle, 53 years old, a World War II USMC combat veteran of the Pacific War, previously strong-willed, clear-headed, and not a drinker, drank himself to death in less than a year. Tragic all the way around. Experience 9. This was a hockey accident when I was 19. I'm 36 now. I shot a low slap shot and there was a net battle and my friend on the other team got shoved, fell over and the puck hit him in his temple and shattered much of the structure. He died later because of the bone fragments in his brain. I stopped playing for a long time after that. Now I play men's league and wear his number. Edit, didn't expect to receive tons of comments and DMs. They're a lot to reply to and really heavy to remember. Emotions came up that I hadn't felt in almost 20 years. I'm really thankful for the outreach. I ask that we show this kind of love to people in person. Experience 10. I had a good friend die at my house years back. He had taken Subutex or Suboxone unbeknownst to me. I was tired and needed to go to bed. He wanted me to hang out, so I smoked some cigarettes with him and we drove to a quick stop for a beer. Hung out a little longer and he looked like he was trashed, so I put him and his sleeping girlfriend's, my roommate, bed and put on season 3 of House MD and said good night. He ended up overdosing and died in his sleep. Sent a good number of the friend group down dark paths, after that myself included. It's getting better for me now at least, and several others are sober finally. Always felt like he wanted to hang out longer so I could keep him alive. Experience 11. Happened to a friend. There were a group of adventure influencers who did a lot of stuff like cliff jumping and cave diving and filming themselves. All strong athletes and very fit. They were trying to get some kind of a waterfall jump. One of them either slipped or misjudged the undertow of a cliff dive area, a very big no-no. She went in and didn't come back, getting sucked under the water and down to a larger pool. Her boyfriend freaked out and jumped in after her, trying to save her. He also didn't come up. Another friend also dived in and didn't make it. The couple who went down eventually had their bodies recovered miles down the river. All 3 died. Experience 12. It wasn't me. It was my dad a few years before I was born. He was a truck driver, and one late night while he was doing his normal drive between Sydney and Brisbane, a car coming in the opposite direction failed to make a turn. The driver was close to his destination and had likely decided to continue driving despite being tired. My dad had nearly 80-ton worth of trucks going 100 kilometers per hour. He couldn't do anything. The car went under the front of his truck. The driver and his passenger were killed immediately. The passenger's 3 children in the back were pinned, but alive. And awake. And screaming. Being in the early 90s, my dad had to run for the nearest house to get help. When he reached a farmhouse, he got them to call emergency. He couldn't bring himself to return to the scene of the accident. The screaming was already haunting him. From that point on, my dad couldn't handle the sound of children crying. It broke my family. The actions of one idiot who didn't take a freaking nap. My dad still had to drive that route several times a week. I remember watching him grip the steering wheel so tight every time he approached that corner. Don't drive tired. Experience 13. I was maybe 16 and had planted a huge vegetable garden in our backyard. My grandma came over and I was super excited to show her since she absolutely loved plants and gardening. She came over and started pulling weeds in my garden. One was especially hard to pull out and she fell backwards and hit her head on a paver stone. Had a brain bleed and was in a care home not knowing who anyone was and unable to walk or move her hands for the rest of her life. I technically didn't kill her, but I think the outcome was worse than death. Edit, just wanted to say thanks for all the support and concern. I did therapy after it happened and no, it wasn't my fault. I still garden and still don't pull weeds as much as I probably should. Stupid weeds. Experience 14. My uncle got a new golf cart just to drive around town. My aunt was test driving with her niece, my cousin, uncle's daughter, as a passenger. She went up the street to a parking lot and turned around. She accidentally bumped the front wheel on a curb. The cart flipped, spilling out her niece, which resulted in the golf cart landing on her head. My aunt was not the same for several years after. My entire family showed her so much support and love and reassured her we knew it was an accident. What made the entire thing worse for her was the court completely annihilated my aunt. They went after her in every single avenue they could. Reckless driving. Suspended license. Revocation of nursing licenses. Top fines they could give. It's a wonder she didn't receive jail time. To the judge, my whole family and friends made personal statements about how wonderful this woman is. It was an accident. We forgive her. You're making the healing process worse for everyone. Nope. They didn't care. Experience 15. The hospital where I was doing renovations hired an engineer to calculate how many years it would take for the steam lines to cool down enough for them to demo. They didn't like the answer they got, so they lied about the numbers to another engineer who gave them a better calculation. During the renovation, the demo company went out of business, so the general contractor asked us to demo the old steam line. Things were great for around 2 hours until the deeply buried steam pushed enough of the water head up enough that it could start making decent progress to the surface. We reported that something was wrong, but the hospital maintenance team essentially told us to go screw ourselves, and eventually, 1.5 hours later, the water started working its way out. We were hauling 100-gallon barrels of water out of the building 2 at a time, while the water kept coming out faster and hotter. By the time we were able to get a cap that could fit around the pipe, high-pressure steam was coming out strong enough that it wasn't visible for a good 1.75 from the pipe. In layman's terms, it was hot enough to instantly strip the flesh of your bone and almost hot enough to instantly burn through your bones. There was no capping that pipe. So sure enough, thousands of gallons of very old, oily, and filthy steam flooded the hospital, and dozens of people died due to infections and unsanitary conditions, mostly people who were too critical of the condition to move. There was an attempt to sue us, then the engineer, but it was very quickly proven that everything was caused by gross negligence on the hospital's part and was promptly swept under the rug. It's painful looking back on it with hindsight. If I knew what I did now, I would have kicked down the maintenance office door and beat the crap out of those two-faced assholes before taking a cap that they had on hand a good 1.5 hours before it was too late to do anything, and dozens of people, including children, would still be alive. I know it's not my fault. I know that I did everything I could have done with the knowledge I had at the time, and I saved a person from getting badly hurt or possibly killed, but there was so much time, and so many things that so many people did wrong. Any one of them doing one thing better and the whole nightmare would have never happened.
We hope you enjoyed listening to today's stories. If you want to see more stories, check out these videos or check the links in the description for more videos. And don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. And ring that notification bell.